how Likkle ideas are transformed into big dreams. On the toolkit, and you will access a lot of resources. A lot of the information that we presented here today, there are a lot of activity sheets. So we encourage you to download some of that information. Also, there's a digital swag bag with Good afternoon, everyone. It's another Wednesday, and we're delighted to welcome you to our show, Likkle Byte Ideas, brought to you by Samuel Fields Consulting Group. I am Doreed Whitlock, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Samuel Fields Consulting Group, and we are delighted that you have chosen to spend some portion of your afternoon with us so that we can get into our weekly discussion about financial management and financial wellness. Of course, we know January is Financial Wellness Month, and we have a packed show for you all month. But today we are focused on money and your mental health. Well, let me get my co-host in here because, as you know, I don't do the show alone. Let's get our financial guru and our CEO, Megan Samuel Fields.
Hey, Doreed.
Megan, welcome.
How are you? I am glad to be here. Hello to all listeners and viewers.
Fantastic. And you know, we're halfway through January already. The year just got started. 2 weeks down,
January,
half a month gone.
And January is the longest month of the year, so we're glad we're halfway there.
Perspective, heck yeah.
So glad.
And of course, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about your money and your mental health. And of course, Monday was a holiday in the United States. We celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and of course, everyone knows him for his I Have a Dream speech. But if you look further into his message, he was very focused on finances and economic empowerment and poverty alleviation, and gave a lot of his quotes have to do with managing your money and empowering yourself financially. So hopefully, and of course, service to community and building community. So hopefully, as we celebrated his birthday, I hope most of you got a chance to read more, learn more about his financial teachings and his beliefs. If you did not get a chance to do it, we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. Send us an email, info at samuelfieldsconsulting.com. Or you can go to we have links to our weekly newsletter. It's all over our Facebook page, linked to some of the articles. And it's a quick read and just a nice daily or weekly dose of financial information. So today we are delighted as a part of financial wellness. And if you can see, looking at the wellness wheel that we have in our backdrop, there's 7 dimensions of wellness. And we have financial, environmental, we have social, we have, help me out, Megan.
Intellectual, spiritual.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's it.
What did we forget?
Emotional.
Okay, so there's 7 dimensions. And so we have been focusing a lot on physical health. And of course, we have our Likkle by Likkle challenge, our calendar. You can also find it on our website. Download it and try as best as possible to engage in some of the daily activities, all designed to help you improve your financial management skills and improve your financial wellness. And so today, the dimension that we're going to focus on is mental health and mental wellness, emotional health. And so we are delighted. We have a young lady who is so dynamic. She is a clinical psychologist, and her name is Jo-Nelle Walsh. Very, very dynamic, very talented, and very experienced in mental health. Jo-Nelle, welcome to Likkle Byte Ideas.
You and good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
So glad you're here,
Great.
Jo-Nelle. Welcome, welcome.
So, Megan, why don't you
Yeah.
give us an
All right.
introduction? She was telling us about herself, and of course,
Oh
we
my
are
gosh.
we've been around the block, so we're dealing with the second generation, and of course, we know her parents. So,
Mm-hmm.
Megan, give us that introduction so that our guests can get to know Jo-Nelle, and then we'll
Yes,
jump right into the
sure.
discussion. There's so much to talk about.
Right. So, Jo-Nelle Walsh, she is a clinical psychologist and she's Antiguan, so we're very proud about that. She's passionate about mental health. She completed her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology with a management from the University of the West Indies, Cable Campus, Barbados. And she has a Master of Science degree in clinical psychology from the University of Southampton, England. Jo-Nelle also has a postgraduate diploma in loss, trauma, and grief management from the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. And she specializes in depression, anxiety, trauma, and grief therapy. That's a lot, Jo-Nelle. She's currently employed as a counselor at the Family and Social Services Division within the Ministry of Social Transformation and Human Development. She's also a co founder and resident psychologist at Mental Health Talk Antigua. I'd love to hear more about that. She's also an international affiliate at the American Psychological Association, APA, as well as a graduate member of the British Psychological Society, BPS. And in her spare time, as if she has spare time,
I
can you tell me
wonder.
what she does? I don't think you'd ever guess, but then if you knew her family, you would. In her spare time, she enjoys watching cricket, and get this, she has been recently certified as a Leeward Islands cricket umpire. I am so
Oh, how
impressed. I
amazing!
am
That's wonderful.
love.
Thank you, ladies.
And we found out that she is the daughter of the
That is
late Ian
wonderful.
Walsh, who was a very good friend of mine. So welcome, welcome, Jo-Nelle. Very,
Yeah.
very glad that
You.
you're.
Yeah, and a really great cricketer as well.
Yes,
Yes,
he was.
Yeah,
yes,
so
he
we have
was.
cricket
He
and
was
greats here.
Hmm.
awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
So I would love
we're
to
delighted. We're always, it's a topic that we,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Judy.
Megan.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm saying mental health and money is a topic that we have toyed with in many different formats since we've started this show and started this kind of work. And so it's always
Absolutely.
been a challenge finding, someone who can make that link between mental and your financial wellness and your mental
And
health.
mental.
And we've always gone overseas and looked for people. A lot of the people we got were people who were based in the United States, not realizing that we have fantastic
We
homegrown
have
talent
homegrown,
right at our
homegrown.
fingertips. Yep, no, this is
Yes.
Right
such an
here.
important topic, especially with our. Yep, this is
So
such an
one of the things
important
I
topic,
wanted,
especially.
no, what I was going to say, I wanted to kind of jump in and ask Jo-Nelle if within her sphere of dealing with mental health, whether she has had persons who have had problems dealing with money, whether money has been one of the issues that have accompanied the different aspects of mental health.
Yes, certainly. Even just the population that I deal with on a regular basis coming from the Ministry of Social Transformation, one of their major issues is money because we're looking at a population that's coming from, some of them are in poverty stricken neighborhoods or communities. So you find that a lot of their challenges even stem from not having money. And we the fact that we're doing this, we're saying that money does have an impact on our mental health. And then when we think about access to service, even though we're not, let's say, coming from a poverty stricken community, it's still so expensive because of the wages and salaries that a lot of persons are working for. And therapy in itself can be costly. So over time, you have persons who even struggle to access mental health services because of financial
Mhm.
constraints.
Mhm. Yeah. And is it only financial constraints, or do you find that people just have a stigma? There's a stigma attached to
Yeah.
getting
Cul-
mental
Cultural
Well,
health
that
barriers.
services.
that is definitely at the forefront. A
Mhm.
lot of persons
Mhm.
still quote unquote say, I have to be crazy to access
Yes.
mental health services,
Yeah.
not
Head no
recognizing
good.
that there's so many stresses that could propel you into needing therapy.
Yeah. 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 Wow.
It's very sad.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well,
So
listen, I wanted to get.
you go ahead to
Go
read.
ahead, Megan.
There's definitely a delay. There's a delay. No, you go ahead.
I don't
Go
know
ahead.
why. What's going on?
Yeah.
Is that any better?
That's okay. Not sure, but
Okay.
go ahead.
Um, I wanted to, before we get delve into deeply into our conversation today, I did some research and I came across Blue Monday. Blue Monday, I come from a travel background, and Blue Monday is huge in travel. About 10 to 15 years ago, there's a clinical psychologist that came up with the whole concept of Blue Monday. It's supposed to be the most depressing day of the year. It's the third Monday in January. And here are the three things that typically um, come together to cause this intense level of depression. Number one, in a lot of places, it's very cold. So for travel, that is good. People, it's January 15th, January 18th, the days are shorter, people are cold, you want a vacation. It's after Christmas. You're probably under a lot of stress. You've overspent, you have credit card debt. Reality's kicking in that you have a long January and you have mountain bills and not enough money. And then the third thing is you're just kind of agitated and anxious because you've made all of these um, New Year's resolutions. And by the third Monday, you're halfway through the month, and reality has begun to kick in. Whether it's exercise, better eating habits, spending, whatever it is, all these things typically come together, and Blue Monday is a thing. And a lot of, I know travel uses it a lot to sell vacations, and a lot of other industries um, also use the concept as a way to generate more business and bring people to focus more on their mental health. What are your thoughts on Blue Monday, Jonelle?
So Blue Monday is very interested. I am going to be honest. When Megan sent it to me, I was like, Blue Monday, interesting. Because it was literally the first time I was hearing about Blue Monday. So
Mhm.
I thought it was very, very interesting, and it made sense because
Oh,
I remember
wow.
when I was studying in England, January is cold, it's
Mhm.
gloomy. You're just coming off
Great.
fields of great Christmas, and you're thrown into doom and gloom. But for us here in the Caribbean, we don't get to experience that in particular. We are sunny all the time. We get some little scattered showers here and there. So for us, it may not necessarily be affected by the weather per se, but more perhaps maybe the
Hmm.
goals that we make. We're as a culture, we are heavy in setting New Year's resolution, and that we want to keep to our New
Hmm.
Year's resolution. And we do believe in gift giving. So we're going all out for Christmas, and then even with family get-togethers, we believe in having plenty food. So we're
And
over.
don't forget the new curtains and the new everything,
You right.
bedspread,
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yes. So when I read it, I said, oh, Blue Monday definitely can be a thing that could possibly affect a lot of us. That, when we're at the middle of the month, we're recognizing, listen, my debts are over my head. My resolutions, I haven't started, or I'm not where I wanted to be. You can understand how people by this time, so it may not specifically be that one particular day, but it's perhaps the period in which of time that we would have been a little harder on ourselves because of what's happening. So it was very interesting hearing about Blue Monday and tying it into our cultural perspective.
Right. So I too didn't know much about Blue
Yeah.
Monday, but I identified with it because by the third Monday in January, you really can't wait for month end because the last time you got paid was maybe December 15th and you probably overspent. So you can't wait for the end of January to come. So I can understand from that point of view why that would be a very blue day for you, um, where you're feeling depressed. You're wondering, oh my gosh, the year has just started and I just can't get it right because I already haven't lived up to the resolutions. I haven't been doing what I said I was going to do. So I can see how that could put people in a funk. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I would love
So
to know
I
what can
I
you do
thought
about it?
yes, yes. I thought it was a good way to really focus on mental health. You know,
Mm,
these days
okay.
people capitalize on so many things for commercial purposes. But I thought move away from, the travel specials and all of the other opportunities to upsell you and perhaps put you in greater debt. I thought it would be a good way for us to really focus on the symptoms at work and really bring greater awareness to people who may be going through some kind of turmoil to really do a refocus on, your money and your mental health. And so I'm glad we had that conversation. We always try to throw out new concepts on this show and to broaden your perspective when it comes to money. But I wanted to bring things back to that vicious cycle between mental health and money. And in doing my research, you know, clearly we all know that your mental health can affect the way you deal with money. But then on the flip
Absolutely.
side, right, your money problems can also affect your mental health. So for a lot of us, we find ourselves caught in a vicious cycle. The trigger for some might be your mental health, causing you to mismanage your money, or for others, it could be your money problems triggering issues with the way you kind of manage or your the evolution of your mental health. Jonelle, tell us about that vicious cycle that a lot of us find ourselves caught up in.
Yeah, so I'll start with the aspect of our mental health affecting our financial wellness. Um, in that aspect, we're looking at when we're not mentally well. Sometimes it causes us to be impulsive. It sometimes we use it as a coping mechanism that we might say to ourselves that we're window shopping, but really and truly we're trying to self-soothe in terms of going out and buying things, and then that plunges into the financial issues. But there are mental health problems that actually do lead us to financial issues, because you have conditions like bipolar disorder that's heavily, persons can be very impulsive when we have those disorders, or perhaps somebody who has a borderline personality disorder. And when we have those disorders, we see high impulse. So for instance, a person who with BPD, they may perhaps decide, okay, I'm just going to spend today, I'm going to give all my money away, without really thinking, because they don't have the capacity to conceptualize and rationalize things in those sort of ways. So you find them giving away their prized possessions. Or you may find somebody who is very depressed and who may even be suicidal, may begin to give away their monies, give away things that are very valuable to them. And when they're treated, when they're on that path of recovery, may have lots of regrets, because of course now we're linking it back to finances. When you recognize, wait a minute, I have no money, I've given away everything, how am I going to recover
Wow.
from this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see that link with mental health disorders and finance is very much intertwined. And then we have not having enough money, no mental health condition, but not having enough money, not being able to supply our basic needs, like having food, water, shelter, being able to take our children to school, or perhaps just finding school supplies, not being able to function at work properly, and then, not being able to function, then you have your boss saying you're not being very effective, you're getting warning letters, may end up even losing your job, plunging you into more financial distress. So
Yes.
we have that good link between not being able to manage our monies well, linked to mental health without any mental health condition, and then we have mental health conditions impacting our financial wellness.
It is a vicious cycle.
Hmm.
It really is, and it's sad. So what types of advice would you give to your clients who, I can't go into the medical aspect, but those persons, like the example you gave, things are not good financially, they're not performing well on the job, they either lose or might lose their job. And so these financial problems are now affecting their mental and emotional states. What type of advice would you give to your clients?
Well, hold
Yeah,
that
one of
thought. Hold that thought. Before we get to advice, I think before we get to advice, I want to learn more about how do you detect it? Because I think for a lot of
Mm,
us, we don't even recognize how severe our condition is. We may not recognize it, because we don't know what to look for. We don't know the symptoms. We may not
or we've been
even
in
give
it so
advice and
long.
support.
Mhm.
Exactly. Or giving advice and support to our peers, family members, and what have you. I don't think we're equipped enough with the knowledge as to what some of the triggers are, what some of the symptoms are, what some of the emerging behaviors are for us to even seek help. So I think for a lot of
Gotcha.
people, we don't even realize how deep in we are and what's really affecting us, and that limits our ability to seek help because we don't realize that we even have a problem. We
True.
you know we label it as something else. So I wanted, before Megan will come back to talk about where we can go to
Yep.
seek help, but I want
Hmm.
to focus a little more before we get there on recognizing what some
What it
of the
is.
symptoms are, and what's really going on.
Yeah. So the thing is, it takes somebody to be very self aware, knowing yourself, to begin to first recognize what's happening, because our mental health is linked to our physical health. And a lot of the times we're having physical issues, not recognizing that it's linked really to something that's happened mentally. Yeah. So when we have financial issues, we tend not to talk much about it. We want to keep that within ourselves or with our families, and that's causing perhaps a headache. Yeah, it's just as even simple as a headache. Or we may be getting stomach bugs, our stomach's churning. So when we become self-aware, we're now looking at, I wonder what happens, or why is this happening to me? It's recognizing that every time I have a headache, I may be thinking about money. So it's really tracking your thoughts. A lot of the times we don't recognize that we're thinking. We feel the emotion and then we act. So if we stop, we pay attention to our emotions a little. So we recognize what's happening. How am I feeling? And then we begin to think, what was I doing in this moment that caused me to feel that way? Or what was I thinking in that moment? What was I thinking about? And then you begin to put the pieces together, recognizing, oh, I may be thinking about the financial challenges I'm having. Perhaps it may be that 2% tax that was just added, that I'm thinking about. How am I going to now afford additional supplies for my family? That's causing that distress, recognizing that bills have also gone up, that I'm thinking, oh, how am I going to afford these bills? That's now triggering the emotional reactions. And when I say emotional reactions, sometimes we're blustering out on others and we don't recognize that we're blustering out. So you may think that a person is perhaps attacking you when that person really just came with a simple question, not even aware of that you're going through any challenges at that moment. Sometimes it's that aggression that just pops out of nowhere, that you begin to recognize how others are interacting with you. If then perhaps people are staying away, you might want to think a little about what's causing that when people usually come to me. Or maybe you in yourself is you're being withdrawn from other persons. You don't want to really go around anybody, especially maybe somebody you perceive that's doing very well. And I say perceive because sometimes it's not always as we look at it. Yes.
Absolutely.
So I say perceive. So you may not want to go around that person. And then perhaps maybe you find that you're just really anxious and nervous, queued up, jittery all the time. There's so many symptoms that could be happening. And then the biggie is not making appropriate decisions. Sometimes we have financial challenges and we're not making the appropriate decisions because we're so hasty. We just need to get out of it. And so we make more decisions in haste and then plunge ourselves deeper and deeper into the issue. So those are just some symptoms that I could think about off the bat that persons may be experiencing.
Yes.
But it sounds to me that the key one is we need to be more self aware, understand
Hmm.
that there is a link between our emotions and what's happening in our minds and whatever is affecting our bodies. So I find that very interesting. So if somebody blusters out at you, um, it might be because they're going through something totally unrelated to the situation at hand, but just don't know how to channel their fears and their worries, and
Right.
they blurt it out. Wow, that is interesting. The other thing I thought about as you were saying these things, especially about making financial decisions, making hasty financial decisions, I also thought of the opposite, where people get so overwhelmed with all the issues that instead of acting, they bury their heads in the sand. So they don't pay the phone bill, they don't pay the light bill, they don't pay the rent because it's just so overwhelming. And so they just, like kids, cover their eyes and think if they're not seeing you, nobody else is seeing you. Have
Exactly.
you had those kinds of experiences as well?
Yes, and that would come from like a neglect of, sorry?
Where people hide from their responsibility.
Yes, yes, definitely. You find that some persons, as I was mentioning before, they become withdrawn. So not just withdrawn from people, but withdrawn from their responsibilities as well. It's that overwhelming feeling that I just can't
And
get anything
reality.
done. Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much. I if I'm not getting it done, I'm not doing very well at it anyway. So we just leave it, and hopefully it just falls into place. Or maybe sometimes there is no hope at all. It just feels as though that they're stuck. And so if I'm stuck, then I'll just be here anyway and just continue to pile up.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is
I,
interesting.
I want to take a chance, not the opportunity to acknowledge our guests. I think we did earlier, but we want to encourage you to post any questions, any comments, any thoughts in the chat. We will definitely direct it to our guest speaker, um, and we hope that everyone can relate to some of the issues that we're raising here. We're still getting to solutions, but I was curious, and I think we touched on this a bit, getting to know your money and mood patterns.
Hmm.
Of course, that's all a part of seeking help, but I want to focus before we go to help more on the diagnosis because I think this thing runs deep.
Mhm.
So I think all of us, we tend to have certain money mood patterns. And I think, Jo-Nelle, you touched on it briefly. But can we just summarize what some of the big money mood patterns, sorry, that you come across often with your clients?
Yeah, so you find that once people are depressed, it depends on their coping mechanisms. So if, let's say, a person is really depressed and they're trying to get out of that particular mood, is that perhaps maybe they may overspend just to try to uplift themselves. There is that connection between spending and a boost of mood. So it gives that person that ability to feel as though that they're coping, feel as though they're in control. And so once they're in control, for them, things are happening, right? And so it's important that we, as you would have said, is we recognize how our mood impact our spending or our finances, because then you do find that, even, let's take for instance Christmas, we tend to be happy as well. And so when we're happy, giving gifts, it's an what we call an altruistic characteristic. And usually when that is happening, you find that people love giving, and they give selflessly, because it does uplift that spirit, it does maintain that happiness. But of course, behind of that gift giving is that spending. So you do find that there is also that connection between happiness and spending, right? And then there is, on that flip side as well, is that the money, not having that money, the connection in terms of the mood is, when we talk about mood, we talk about those emotions that we're having, the feeling of the sadness, the frustration, the being confused. So feeling that way as well, you can get into very restrictive patterns in terms of spending, as we touched earlier, in terms of not seeing people pay their bills or take care of their responsibilities.
Mhm. So you have the overspender, the altruistic, and the restrictive type of personality, is what I think I've heard in terms of how
Yes.
people manage their money and their moods. That's interesting.
Yes.
Hmm. Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Especially
Tegan,
the
do we have any
altruistic
questions at
one.
this point?
We don't have any questions. We have just some persons saying hello. We have Althea Dyer. She says Althea is watching. And our regular, Althea is also a regular. Manelva Samuel, she says good afternoon. So no questions at this time, but please feel free to send your questions in.
Fantastic. So, Jo-Nelle, let's talk about solutions. I think based on everything you've outlined, most of us can relate to some aspect of this. We all
Oh yeah.
have different triggers. We all look at this differently, and we have different um, life situations and scenarios facing us. But tell us, for the average person out there who, you may still be in that window where things are still snowballing. You're not, you may not necessarily have a clear diagnosis as yet, but things are building. What's some advice that you'd share with persons who are very concerned about their money situation and how they can manage it better to ensure that they protect their mental health?
Okay. One of the things that I often say to my clients, and we often go through in detail, is developing a plan. We have SMART goals. When we started, we spoke about setting our New Year's resolutions, not being where we want to be, so we end up at Blue Monday. So it's important that we set SMART goals. We're setting specific goals, we're setting measurable goals, goals that are achievable and realistic. And when we're able to do that, then we're able to map things out and really follow through in terms of where we are. And once goals are realistic, then they definitely become achievable. Sometimes we set goals that are really and truly out of our reach at that moment. We really haven't assessed the pros and the cons of the goal. in our culture, we tend to think that, oh, if we think about the cons, we're too pessimistic. But not necessarily. We have to plan, and when we plan, we have to plan with plan A, B, and C, and maybe even D and F, right? Coming down the line. So we have to make sure that our goals are smart, and it's important that we take time with ourselves. It's okay when we recognize that we're at January 15th and we're not exactly where we want to be. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're not meeting our goals, but it's just that it's taking a little bit more time than expected. So it's important that you break down those goals. If you're now into a family situation, let's say you're living in a household with multiple persons, it's also important to have a conversation with everybody in that family. Figure out what is the family's financial plan. What is it that you want to achieve for the year? Have your family buy into that plan. Where is it that you want to go? What are everybody's individual goals? And make that financial plan. And one of the things, or one of the centers I often refer my clients to is the financial center. I think they're on Cornally. That I often say to them, it's good to have that agency that deals directly with your finances, so they will help you to budget, put that plan in place, cement that plan even more before you decide to make any decision. And it's always good when you're making decisions to really weigh the pros and cons and really think about it before you make any major financial decision. And once you're able to do that, I think you're on a very good path. But going back to also being very self-aware, understand you, understand what is it that you need for yourself, and how are you going to take care of yourself in all of it. Understand what are your stressors, and don't forget your coping mechanisms, because you're definitely going to need it when you're making major financial decisions, or just any financial decision on a whole, because it just generally makes us anxious. I just tell people, no matter how I'm going to spend money, it make my heart pump a little. So we
Especially when it's
understand
a
that.
lot of money.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. So you wonder, am I making the right choice? But once you
Mhm.
have that concrete plan, you can be comforted that I have my plan. I am good with self. If anything is supposed to happen, I know what my support network is. I know what my family plan is. So I'm able to communicate with everybody around me. And I'm just able to tap into my coping mechanisms.
You mentioned know your stressors. I don't know if it's the same as know your triggers, but I think that's important as well. Knowing your triggers, you know
Mhm.
what might be the things that might send you off track. Um, so I'm going to admit I'm a foodie, and if I want to stick to a diet, which I struggle with every year, um, and I say, okay, I'm not going to have ice cream, I'm not going to have snacks, and then I pass by a place that's selling all these nice smelling things, then it's all over, game over. So I know that if I really want to stick to my diet, I must avoid these things. And so perhaps as
Mhm.
well, in managing our money, we have to recognize what are the triggers, what are the things that might cause us to spend. And it might be linked to our emotional health as well. And so different things trigger different people. So I think in being self-aware, you also have to know what are the things that trigger you, and plan for that, so that you don't fall into the trap of spending unnecessary money because of a particular trigger. Yeah.
And you're so right with that. That definitely is true, because as much as people we are the same, we're so different. So what's going to be my trigger is definitely not going to be your trigger. And once you're self-aware, you're going to recognize your triggers. And so then you start a plan, you put things in place to buffer you from those triggers, or just learn to cope. So, because some triggers are unavoidable,
Yeah,
you
that's
know
true.
so we have to learn to cope with those triggers, because what happens with a trigger if we don't cope with it is that sometimes we bury it and we just pile stuff on, and because we can't see it, it's automatically gone. But
We
if
do.
we have that antness and we step in it, it definitely rise up. So then we have that trigger, that major trigger coming now to affect us. And if that trigger is your finances and you've been burying it and not dealing with it, then eventually when something major happens, it's going to feel overwhelming, like that frustration, confusion, and you perhaps are wondering, why is this happening to me? But it's have been there for so long that you've oppressed and suppressed it, you've avoided it, that you haven't been able to deal with it, so it's now just coming to the surface.
Mhm.
Wow,
That's deep. That's very deep.
that's very
We have
powerful.
we have
I
a
see that we
question
have some
slash
comments, Megan.
comment.
Let's take a
Yep,
break.
yep. I'm
Okay.
gonna go into that. So Roseanne Etinoff, hi Roseanne. She says, "Good afternoon, panelists. Money issues are tied to self-esteem, scarcity mindset, and trauma recovery, loss, among other things. To address the link to mental health and allow us to get to solutions, would it be a good would it be good to introduce money as within the curriculum in school before children graduate? This will build a solid platform for adult behavior and give them a better ability to build wealth over time." What say you, Janelle?
Money management is definitely a key tool, a practical tool that we all have to face. And so addressing it in school, perhaps even in not just our theoretical accounting classes, but introduce it into our accounting classes, can be very helpful for those children. And then it's also looking at the self-esteem aspect of it. Once we have programs that could also help children to build that self-esteem, that self-confidence, then they're able to navigate a lot of it that's happening. I know some schools would do something of the sort. I'm not sure if it's in HFLE or I don't remember the name of the program that they do in schools, but they do get some little aspect of it. But perhaps if we are able to go into the schools and really delve into it, help teach children coping mechanisms and so forth, it could be really helpful. Because what we find is that in our school system we focus a lot on the theoretical aspects of working, just getting preparing for working, but no one really teaches us the practical skills that we'll really need to help us to navigate a lot of life's challenges. And if we're able to incorporate some of it in our curriculum, I definitely think that it could be helpful.
I agree. Well, we've always been saying that financial literacy is something that should be taught in schools. We're strong proponents of it. But I think, in addition to that, um, the other offshoots of it, because we always say that wellness, it's a circle, and it's not just being financially well. You have to be emotionally, mentally, physically, everything to be totally well. And as I read what Roseanne said, and as I listened to you, I thought about the things that we bring from home. So we're living in a household where we have the scarcity mindset. Money is scarce, and we're going to take that with us right through adulthood unless somehow the cycle is broken. And perhaps within school, if somehow we can have a program where children understand the value of money for what it really is and recognize it's not something to be feared, it's not something that you should be overly concerned about. Yes, concerned about, but money is not the be all and end all, and have a better relationship with money. Perhaps we'll have a better outcome when we the children become adults. So I think that is something I would love to see. I would love to see and be a part of.
And of
And
course,
that transition from childhood into adulthood is a very huge one, because it means with that scarcity mindset, that in itself could be a trauma, not having enough. So when we recognize that we don't have enough, when we get there in adulthood, it's that overspending that we then when we think about it, it's linked back to our childhood of not having enough. So we feel like we always need to have, when we're able to. And then you might recognize your partner. When we look at relationships, your partner may be wondering, why do you always need to buy 10 rolls of toilet paper when we already have 3? We don't need it. Yeah. So it's even those little things that we don't recognize, those traumas from our childhood come over into our adulthood. So it's definitely a mindset that we have to begin to teach children, that even though now we may not have, it's okay right now, but we'll have to learn to plan to have.
Yep.
So you show them the solutions. Just don't say that we don't have. You can involve them in the plans to get
Yep.
there, so that when they get into adulthood, they understand how to transition into their own lives.
Agreed. Agreed.
And
And
we
Miriam
often too
Samuel
talk about,
says, I was just saying,
go ahead.
Miriam Samuel says, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Miriam Samuel.
Yeah, we often focus on the 5 money musts. And I think as it relates to our mental health, I think the more we can help the young people make the connection between, like you said, Megan, the power of money. Money, remind us what the 5 money musts are, Megan.
So the 5 money musts: you must save, you must invest, you must multiply your money, you must plan, and then you must enjoy your money.
Correct. So I think when, that to me is how you promote a healthy mindset and a healthy lifestyle in terms of the role that money can play or should play in your lives. It's a tool for advancement, not a tool that keeps you down. I mean, I think for a lot of
True.
us that grew up with working parents and there was never enough, scarcity for us meant gloom and doom. Do you have 3 slices of bread? Are you allowed 3 slices of bread because your family's doing okay? Or do you live in a household where your parents had to actually ration things? I mean, there was always enough to eat, but you had to watch your eating and what was available. Unfortunately, if that is your mindset, whereby you think of money as a limiting thing as opposed to something that you have the power to make or to multiply or to enjoy, I think those are some of the links that we need to address as we look at the impact or the linkages between money and mental health. We really, I think the key between money and mental health is looking at the 5 money musts. Because if you understand the 5 things that you must do to enjoy money, you'll be well on your way to better um, mental health and a better mental well-being.
Yes. And Jo-Nelle mentioned about making smart goals. That's all a part of planning, you know, making sure that you set realistic goals. I always say, it's good to plan, but be realistic. You can't expect you're just leaving school and you're planning to build a house, a $400,000 house in 2 years. Um, it would be good to plan, but that just might not be realistic. But if you, let's say you plan to save $200 a month for the next 2 years, then that might be a more realistic thing. And then you build on it. So planning is very important, and smart planning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really like the money must of enjoyment, because then I think it comes back down to everything else. Because when we think about it, a lot of the times we don't enjoy. We're so busy looking at all of the things that we must do, we must get it done correctly. But we forget that aspect of ourselves that really make us happy. It could be anything, just the very small things. So I really like that aspect of enjoy, but it's enjoying smartly, because we're planning for it, we're investing,
Exactly.
we're doing all of the things that we must do before getting there. And I'm thinking that we could do all of it at the same time, because there's no one particular way that we should go about it. It's once we are able to put our smart plans in place, set our short-term goals so we can achieve our long-term goals, and along the way enjoy and recognize each achievement. So we may not be saying that just enjoy all of the money, but we're even saying enjoy each achievement, each accomplishment. So if your goal was to save $200 this month, and at the end of the month you save that $200, enjoy that achievement, celebrate your achievement, tell someone about it, tell someone about your goals, give gratitude for it. So it's that sort of enjoyment that we're also looking at. So I'm really happy to hear about that we must enjoy.
And that actually, I think, would be linked to your mental health, because
Absolutely.
I'm thinking all the
Absolutely.
happy, what is it, the endorphins,
Endorphins.
the happy ones, that helps with our mental state and our emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep, the
that's the
endorphins.
link. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This has been great, Jo-Nelle.
This has been excellent. We'd love to
Yes.
share. Megan, can you share the link to that mental health quiz? There's a mental health quiz that we'd love for persons to take a look at. It
Yeah,
just
I
gives you a
actually
sense.
tried it, but it didn't give me the answers. It didn't. It just kind of stuck.
You
Did you
didn't
try
get your
it?
answers?
No. When I did it,
Oh, I got my answers.
you did? Okay, maybe it's something with
Yeah.
me then. Okay, so
All
I
right. Well,
will try and
let's
put
hold
it.
off. Let's hold off in putting it out. I'd hate to put it out. Then
Okay,
there's a.
okay, right. So yeah, I tried it and then it kind of got stuck. It didn't. It didn't give me my responses. So I thought,
We'll share
yeah,
it a little later on Facebook once we're
yes,
sure that the link
yes,
works and everything. We'd hate to
yes,
add to anyone's stress by putting a test out there that does not work.
absolutely. Yeah, I did it and it was
Well,
quite
any
work.
final
So
thoughts, any questions
we don't
for
have any
our
more questions at this time. Perhaps you can ask Jo-Nelle to just give her final thoughts.
well, before she does, Megan, can you tell us a bit about our next week, our next
Oh
guest,
my,
and
yes, yes,
what we look
yes,
forward to?
absolutely. So as you know, January is Financial Wellness Month. So we have been trying to focus on various aspects of our wellness. And of course, today we're talking about our mental health or emotional health. Next week, Wednesday, we'll be speaking about our spiritual health and focusing on the question, can money buy happiness? And I'm going to say this is part two, because we had part one before where we spoke about, can money buy happiness? And we're going to be doing part two to that topic, can money buy happiness? And we're going to have our very own Reverend Dr. Calvin Samuel, who is our brother. He will be our guest next week, speaking about, can money buy happiness? And he'll be looking at it from a spiritual point of view. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. So please tune in next week as well.
Yes, he's a faithpreneur.
Faithpreneur,
He's a
absolutely.
faithpreneur. He definitely is a man of faith, but definitely has a lot of practical applications as to how you leverage that faith to ensure that you can live a successful life. So he is a pastor, an MBA, a PhD, but very very much an entrepreneur, bringing the faith aspects of our life, to intersect with the financial aspects of our life. So I encourage all of you to join us. We did something similar last year, and it was absolutely amazing. One of our
It was.
best.
It was. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Yep. So,
Let's
Jo-Nelle,
wrap
it's
it
been
up.
an absolute pleasure talking to you
It
about money
was.
and our mental health. We'd love to give you a few minutes to wrap up your presentation today, and also any advice that you have for our audience in terms of how they can better get on top of managing their mental health and their financial health.
Also, Janelle, if you can share your contact details in case our audience, somebody wants to make contact with you. That would be good as well.
Right. Thank you, ladies, once again so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And thank you to your audience as well. So, both listening, viewing, and those to view after, thank you so much for listening to us. And I want to say my top thing it's just to be self-aware. Once you're self-aware, then you're able to know where you're going to go. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out for help. The In my bio you would have heard about Mental Health Talk Antigua. So we're an NGO. We're newly formed NGO out of COVID, and what we have done was to create a website with mental health practitioners in Antigua and Barbuda, and that is mentalhealthantigua.com. The list isn't everyone in Antigua, but it sure definitely is a start, and it's free for all in Antigua and Barbuda. So you can go to the website and look for mental health practitioners, and don't be afraid to seek help. Understand that your mental health is linked to your physical health. So your diabetes or your hypertension may be acting up, but that's because you're causing yourself some stress. So we have to be very wary. Just be self-aware. And I'm just going to share my contact information is 775-3192, and there is where you can reach me if you need any assistance with your mental health.
And the website again is mentalhealthantigua.com.
Mentalhealthantigua.com. We do
Okay.
also have a Facebook page. You are free to join the Facebook page as well. The Facebook page is Mental Health Talk Antigua.
Okay.
We
Okay,
are a
great.
Excellent.
group of 3 psychologists and 1 advocate.
Okay. Great. Great.
Fantastic.
I think I heard about you guys. Okay. Yes, I think I did. This is great.
And
Thank you so much.
there's a young lady. I think she was on earlier. I've seen her a lot. I haven't met her, but I think she lives in New York. I believe her name is Serene Prince or Price. I forget which one it
Yes,
is.
Prince.
Yeah, I haven't met her, but I just want to acknowledge her because I've seen a lot of work that she's been doing. She's been very vigilant, active on social media. I've seen that she's traveled to Antigua and done a lot of talks. And so, Serene, I don't, we haven't met, but I just want to let you know that your efforts have been noted, and I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I always applaud people like yourself. You live in the diaspora, but you seem to be very in touch with what's going on on the ground and very interested in assisting our young people, especially in improving their mental health. So I just thought I would take
Awesome.
the opportunity to publicly acknowledge
Okay.
you and to thank you for your contributions to nation building.
Great.
And it sounds like you know her, Jo-Nelle.
Yes, we would have worked together with the Wadadley Wellness. That's where I first met Serene. I had no
Okay,
idea who
great.
Serene was
I've
until
just seen her
that
online.
opportunity she came and she introduced herself to our organization, and it was a pleasure working with her.
My kind
As
of people.
clinicians in Antigua, we do try because we're not a lot of us. So we
Yes.
do try to network and get familiar so we know the pathways. When our clients are needing help, we know where the best referrals are to.
Mhm.
So we really do try as a mental health community, and it is growing. So we do ask persons that if you're in that profession, it's good to be connected with the other mental health practitioners around. We recently launched the Association for Counselors, ABAMSI, I think it's called, and so we're definitely going in the right step as
See.
clinicians. But I'm looking forward to even being a part of that organization.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Janelle, thank you so much. We really appreciate having you today. We've learned a lot. I have learned a lot. I see even more links between financial wellness and mental and emotional wellness. And we definitely will be keeping in touch because I can see how we can do things together. And I really applaud you, what you're doing. Continue to do it and continue to umpire too.
Oh, that is so
Thank you.
amazing. That is so amazing.
Don't know where you get
Yeah,
the time, but
yeah. So she has physical, mental, and of course, um,
exactly.
financial for
And
sure
financial,
on the
absolutely.
wheel.
Yes, on the wheel. Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, to
Thank you
our
so much.
Excellent.
esteemed audience, we want a precious Wednesday evening to participate and to be a part of this discussion. We sincerely appreciate your involvement and your contributions, and we invite you to join us again next Wednesday, same time, for another great discussion about money. We believe that money management has to become a part of your lifestyle and your wellness approach. And so we continue to do our small part to make sure that we keep everyone apprised on how we can all become better money managers. We can all use great advice. So
Absolutely.
from our team to yours, thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing all of you back here next Wednesday for another great edition of Likkle Byte Ideas. Thank you so
Bye,
much. Have a
everyone.
great evening, everyone.
Bye bye.